You've even got characters like JD Vance, the vice president, who for so long has been someone who has talked openly and often about not supporting Ukraine, how it's a European problem rather than an American problem. Well, it would appear that Vance is one of the strongest advocates for the supply of Tomahawks.
Right.
He feels, I think, that the end of the road has been reached as far as talking to the Russians is concerned.
This is Pienaar and Friends with me, John Pienaar and Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday, and Mikey Smith from The Mirror. And we're joined now by Alistair Dawber, the news editor at the Wall Street Journal. Hey to you, Alistair.
Hi, how you doing?
Well, really well, Alistair. Thanks for joining us. So we've been talking, as you'd have expected, about the spying for China row here in this country at Westminster. Really, it's sort of moving up at a rapid rate into the high altitude of politics now. I just wonder, how's it being seen where you are, Alistair? Is it getting much play? I wonder what the White House thinks of all of this. I mean, their sort of suspicion of China and worry about countries, including Britain, getting too close to China for their liking. They don't like anyone getting too close to China. What do they make of it?
That's right, John. I mean, there's not a huge amount here specifically about this case. I know the Sunday Times had a good story on Sunday with warnings from the Trump administration. It really wasn't pleased about the case involving these two former parliamentary assistants. But in a broader context, there is a great suspicion here on China. They really don't like countries, allies, strong allies of the US, is like the UK, like Australia, like many European countries, being close to China. There's suspicion about China's motives, about China's influence here in various ways, and more than anything else, I think at the moment on trade as well. We've had a huge row in the last few days over China's restrictions on the export of rare earth minerals, these things that go into technology like mobile phones and semiconductors. And that's caused a huge spat between Washington and Beijing in the last few days. Talk of more tariffs, talk of Trump's meeting with President Xi, which has been in the offing for later this month in South Korea, being cancelled. So it's a combination of things, and certainly the idea that the government is in the UK is too close to China from a security point of view, from a trade point of view, from an economic point of view. It won't sit well with the Trump administration in Washington.
No, that's as you kind of might have expected. The idea of a trade war, another trade war with China, that's going to worry an awful lot of people all over the global economy. I mean, the last time that happened, President Trump was pretty much made to draw his horns in by the markets reacting badly to all of that, and yet the saber rattling is going on again now. I want to ask you about something else. Move on, if I can, Alistair, to Friday, because Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is going to go to the White House, and he's hoping to come away with a clear promise for Ukraine to get hold of powerful, advanced Tomahawk cruise missiles to use, deep into Russia. What's the word on that? Because it sounds as if Donald Trump may actually be leaning in that direction to give him what he wants. That's after refusing to take a tough line on Putin for so long.
Yeah, since the summit about 6 weeks ago in Anchorage, Alaska, where Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin met, relations have certainly cooled with Russia and by contrast warmed with Ukraine. And I think the Ukrainians now feel emboldened to ask for the Tomahawk cruise missiles. These are possibly the most advanced long-range missile on the planet. They've got a range of more than 1,000 miles, would put Moscow in the crosshairs of Ukraine's military planners. And Donald Trump 4 or 5 times in the last few weeks has hinted that he might well be prepared to send Tomahawks. That is only really the start of the issue. If on Friday Volodymyr Zelensky walks away with a promise that the weapons are going to be supplied,
yeah.
It's difficult. I mean, they're submarine fired for one thing. Ukraine doesn't have any submarines, so they'd need an adaptable land launch system. They would rely on the Americans to input the target data. It's a very advanced missile, which requires a lot of training. So even if on Friday Donald Trump says, "Yeah, we'll hand over 20 Tomahawk cruise missiles," I still think we're some way off seeing some of the targets that Ukraine wants to hit deep inside Russia, actually blowing up.
Yeah, and Mikey and Kate, as I say, there's a few bridges to cross before we get to the point of US Tomahawk missiles being handed over to Ukraine. But if that's what we hear on Friday, what a turnaround from where we were.
Yeah, it's such a turnaround where, I mean, everyone will remember that awful summit in the Oval Office where JD Vance tore into Zelensky. They've obviously met, Zelensky and Trump have obviously met a few times since then, and things have warmed up. But I'm wondering, I mean, is this all kind of the knock-on impact of that Gaza deal then? Does he kind of want to be Mr. Peacemaker and sees peace through strength? You know, this famous phrase. Is that what we think's happening here?
It looks like that, Alistair, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Donald Trump, certainly from a foreign policy point of view, is really emboldened after what happened at the weekend in the Middle East. I mean, he's walking on air at the moment, and he feels that there's a blueprint that he can strong arm two sides of a conflict into a peace deal. As we know, though, the situation in Ukraine, the relations between himself and Vladimir Putin and Zelensky are very, very different. In the Middle East, you know, the strong actor was Benjamin Netanyahu, an ally of Washington. The situation's almost reversed when it comes to Ukraine. The strong actor is Vladimir Putin, someone who won't bow to pressure from the White House. It's been suggested several times that the talk over Tomahawks really isn't an avenue, if you like, for the Ukraine to be supplied with these long-range missiles. It's to bring Vladimir Putin to heel. I think it's definitely true that the White House has got to a point now where it's incredibly frustrated with the Russians. You've even got characters like JD Vance, the vice president, who for so long has been someone who has talked openly and often about not supporting Ukraine, how it's a European problem rather than an American problem. Well, it would appear that Vance is one of the strongest advocates for the supply of Tomahawks. Right. He feels, I think, that the end of the road has been reached as far as talking to the Russians is concerned.
Yeah, they do seem to have their hopes up. The Ukrainians, I spoke earlier to the former Ukrainian ambassador to London, Vadim Pristeko.
It took us almost half a year to explain to the new American administration that this war cannot be taken easily, as many other things the President Trump is bragging that he finished already. But I guess that now with the visit of President Zelensky on Friday to the White House, it will be totally different from what we observed in the last February. And we are getting, all of us, not just Ukraine, but Ukraine with allies, getting somewhere where can really put the Russians in the place they belong to.
Right, so some of the hopes among Ukrainians. And Alistair, you know, the hope is that Ukrainians get those new, more powerful long-range weapons. But meanwhile, there's a lot of talk. And more than just talk, it seems to be, you know, something which is approaching a real possibility that Ukraine could, through European friends and others, have access to the benefits of those frozen Russian assets, that reservoir of reserves sitting in banks around the world, some $300 billion worth. And if that can be used to drum up money for Ukraine, that could be, Alistair, a game changer, and it could happen.
Yeah, you know, much like long-range strike capabilities, the Tomahawks, this has been talked about for quite some time. There's as you suggest, about 300 billion in frozen Russian assets, which isn't likely to head back towards Moscow anytime soon. You know, this money's been earmarked to rebuild the Ukrainian economy when the war ends, to rebuild parts of Ukraine that have been battered by Russian armaments. Again, it would be a huge game changer for Ukraine. It seems that every stage that Ukraine has asked for something substantive. If you look back to the Biden administration, they wanted F-35 jets, they wanted Patriot defensive missile systems. There's been debate, slowness. There's been these things have taken an awful long time, only for the Americans and the Europeans to come on board with a yes. And the same applies to things like Storm Shadow, the UK long-range missile. The Ukrainians are asking for it. It may come along. I think many Ukrainians ask, you know, when we first raised this stuff, it's not because, you know, it's would like to have. It's pretty vital for trying to win the war and put an end to the war, which is what Donald Trump's talking about pretty much every day.
All right, Alistair Dawber, news editor at the Wall Street Journal, joining us live from stateside. Thanks, Alistair. Great to talk to you. Come back and see us again.